Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today's video is about door skin material, and I've been using this material for years and years. It's the plywood that they use when they build doors, the very thin plywood that they apply to the front and back of doors. And I've been using it. You can buy it as a building material, and I've been using it for years. And today I wanted to show you some of the ways that I use it, because there's a lot of things you can do with this stuff. So let's get started. So before I get started on my couple little demos today, I wanted to show you this material, this door skin material. You may be able to purchase it in a little bit smaller sheets. I measured it. Mine is 1/8 of an inch, so it's very, very thin. But you know what? It's still very, very strong material. And what I like about it, sometimes if you just want to do some quiet cutting, you can actually cut this stuff with a utility knife. The best way of cutting it is on plywood, and when the plywood is against the grain underneath. And the reason for that is if you're cutting this top plywood, the door skin material, and you're cutting it with the grain underneath, sometimes the knife will follow the grain of the wood underneath. So if you've drawn a line across there and you find it's going off the line, it could be because of the grain underneath that's making it run astray. So if we go against the grain up here, it actually works a little bit better. So I'm just going to show you that you can make a couple of cuts, and if I was in a better position here, I can actually do that with just one pass. But even if it takes a couple of passes, nice way, quiet way, no dust. You don't even need a workshop for working with this stuff. You can do that anywhere and cut sheets of whatever size you want, whatever it is you're making. So as you can see, the material that I purchased is 4 feet by 8 feet sheets. And you could use a circular saw to cut it. I'm just going to use a knife and cut mine. When you get your material, have a close look at both sides of it, because this plywood is sold as what they call good one side. So one side is very well prepared, sanded. The other side is filled and just not quite as nice looking. So one of the first things I want to replace are these trays that I keep my doweling jigs in, and some of the accessories. And you can see how, because the angle of them, you can see how much space they waste there. And I think I have 4 of them in my drawer. They're the wrong size, they don't fit, and it's just going to be so much easier to get something that's the right size that will fit these. Now I'm going to go ahead now and start making the parts for these little trays. And I've decided I'm going to use my 7 1/4 inch blade. I've got the 40 tooth in here, and I've also got the splitter that we made a few videos ago. But the one thing I want to point out, this has happened on previous saws when I've been using this material. With some fences, they're a little bit higher than this particular fence, and as you go along, sometimes when you're cutting, it might be a tiny bit lower in one area. That is what happened to another saw of mine. And as I was moving wood along, the wood could get caught in there. So what I had to do with that saw was to clamp a piece of wood that was absolutely flat to the bottom of my saw, or to the deck of my saw, and use that as a temporary fence. But in this case, I'm able to lower this fence down just enough so that this wood is not going to get caught under it. Well, and some of you are probably wondering how we're going to keep this all together, because this is very thin material. You can't just glue it together because it has no stability. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the table saw, and we're going to make some little tiny reinforcing strips that we're going to use in all of the corners, and then we'll just glue it in, and it'll go together in no time. Now I'm going to use this thin strip ripping jig. This is the best one that I've found. and I'm going to use it to cut the strips. And normally I would just use one of my measuring bars. I have a 1/4 and 3/8, and you know what? I just found a 1/4 was too small and 3/8 was a little on the large size. So I'm going to split the difference and use 5/16, and I'm just going to use a drill bit because I don't have a measuring bar that's 5/16, but that drill bit is perfect, so it'll work just fine, and I can go ahead now and cut those strips. Okay, I've cut all the strips that I need to thickness. Now I still need to cut them square, and I'm going to use the same setup and the same jig. I've just raised the blade, or lowered the blade rather, to just above the material. Okay, now I'm going to show you my method of putting these together, and you may come up with something better. And I'm just using ordinary carpenter's glue. You could use epoxy, you could use CA glue, lots of things you could do. Now, there's the little strips, and I've pre-cut these to make this go a little bit quicker, but I wanted to show you the little jig that I make when I'm making these, and all it is a little right angle, just a block with a piece of wood on it, and I just use my draw saw, one of my pull saws with a very fine teeth, and you can cut them off. You can very quickly duplicate them by putting the saw against the wood, bringing the next one up, and cut them like that if that's the way you want to do it. You could even mark them because they're all going to be uniform in size. Now, to put these together, the first thing you do is when you made your base, you needed to figure out whether the end piece was going to go inside or on the outside, and I made mine on the inside, and the way you can tell that is my end pieces are exactly the same length as my base, and my end pieces, you can see that there's a little bit of wood on each side. See how there's wood on each side? So that means they're going on the inside. Now, to put these together, what I do very quickly is just use some tape on the ends. I put the tape together like that, and just make a little standing box. And it's not very rigid when you first put it together, but it'll come together pretty quickly. So that's basically your dry fit. And if all of your upper sides fit nicely on the base, then you're good to go for the next step. And the next step is just pretty simple. And what I do, and you can do, there's lots of different ways of doing this. I just use carpenter's glue and I just run a bead. I don't worry about smearing it around. I just run a bead on each side. There, and that's got it. And that's all the way around on all four sides, and that's it. That's ready to go. You don't have to do anything with it. Just let that glue sit. There's another one that I made, honestly, just a few minutes ago. It didn't take that long, and you know, it's already pretty well set. So this one's ready to go in 24 hours. It'll be hard. You'll be surprised how strong that little box is, and that will last you for years and years. Another thing I've used this door skin material for is making doors. In this case, cupboard doors or panel doors, workshop doors, all sorts of things like that. And I've just thrown this together very quickly just so you get an example of what this looks like. And in this case, I actually used my doweling jig to do that. So these are going to be a little on the tight side, but just so that you can see, you can, with a dowling jig and some door skin material and some wood, and make a door that way. And this is a really nice stable way of using the inset as plywood, because you don't have to worry about natural wood, how it expands and contracts, and you have to leave a little bit of space for it. With plywood, all you need to do with your table saw is run a bead in there so that the plywood slides in there, not too tight, but snug, and it'll move around in there. And then you just put the rest, in this case I just use dowels, put the rest of the door frame together, and you got an instant door, and it's going to be a good stable one too. So that works really well. Well, that concludes my video for today, working with door skin material. And there's tons of things you can do with it, from boxes, doors. You could make scroll saw patterns. You could make figurines for Christmas, for Halloween, for Thanksgiving. There's all sorts of things you could do with door skin material. It's inexpensive and it's easy to work with. And if you've not used it, it might be something you want to try. I'm Colin Canet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.